In this presentation and this discussion, we're going to talk about the relationships between organizations and groups. We've talked about how to use groups and how to create groups and how to manage groups before in other presentations and other parts of the training. Where this one is focused though, it's on the relationship between them. And what I mean by that is this. You've got a parent organisation, say at a national level, with a whole series of other organisations at regional levels. How do we manage that relationship, and how is that manifested on the platform in terms of the respective, am I a group or am I a organisation? And I want to talk about this in terms of how we raise funds and into how do you create that bond and that emotional bond at the different levels to make it relevant so that organisations get more funds raised and the individuals get the services they seek in their communities. This presentation has been put together as a result of a discussion that we've had in the training and based on the feedback from various users of the service. So let's get into it. The starting point is you have a simple organisation with groups associated with it. This may be a swimming club with 10 teams associated with it. The swimming club itself creates the account as the organisation. All funds go to its bank account. Each of the swimming teams then becomes a group associated with that organisation. The organisation runs campaigns that service all the needs of its membership. So for example, if it's a sporting organisation, it might raise funds for equipment for all of the teams associated with it. This then leaves the individual teams to run their own campaigns, and by doing it this way, this is where they create the emotional bond at the individual level and at the household level. So let's just stick with our sporting one at the moment. Let's say we've got a soccer club and you've got your individual soccer teams. They're all groups. They're then raising funds for the need of that group. So, for example, how do they get the children to the next match in the competition? So they'd be raising funds at that level, leaving the organisation to do across the board fundraising. And remember, you can run multiple campaigns, you run multiple fundraising activities like raffles, donations against those campaigns, and all of the funds are going back to the organisation's bank account. Any questions and comments around that? Yep. Okay, let me repeat that question back. Does the group have to be a sports team? The answer to that is no. Remember when we talked about this before, we said you may be a charity raising funds for the homeless. You may run service centres in particular suburbs. Each suburb can become a group. Now, what can also happen is an organisation may have a series of groups, a series of logical structures associated with it, but it may also want to run things on interests. So let's say you're a policy advocacy organisation. So let me say that again. You may be a policy-based advocacy organisation. You may be running a series of interests at the community level around saving a local park. So you might then create the local park supporters group and run multiple fundraising campaigns for the specific needs of that group, as well as leaving the organisation free to run its other campaign-based ones as well. So the groups can be teams, they can be areas of business operation, they can be interest-based, they can be issues-based. Any questions around that one? Okay, let's move to the next part of the discussion. Where I want to talk about here is, let's take an example from Australia, and let's stick with our sporting ones for the moment. Australia has a national and states, so this might also apply to America, India, a whole bunch of other ones. If you're in a country, let's say like England or New Zealand, where you might have a national body and then regional based bodies. The way we can do it is this. The national organisation creates an account as a organisation. Depending upon its relationship with the state or regional organisations, will decide upon what it wants to do next. So let's just stick with the national organisation for a moment. The national organisation runs campaigns to meet national needs. For example, putting equipment in schools. And again, that organisation can create the activity-based, the campaign-based, the issues-based interest groups, and it can have as many as it likes, and they're all running campaigns. Now, the relationship with the regional or the state-based organisations is that they are separate entities. They work collaboratively with the national body, but they might want to be standalone entities, in which case the state-based and the regional-based organisations are registered as organisations with their own bank account and with their own management of funds. Again, the multiple groups can be associated with these organisations, running their own campaigns, and these groups can be teams, interest-based groups, and all of those things as discussed previously. Now, it's a key decision between a parent entity, if you like, and its associated organisations as to how it wants to structure itself in terms of being organisations and groups. We're going to talk about this scenario a little bit more on the next slide. Now, let's pick an example of a student union at a university. It might want to provide shared central services to each of the on-campus organisations. Now, those organisations may have their own bank accounts and may be standalone organisations like that shown on the previous slide. Or the university union, let's say, may say, right, we need to be able to have some level of influence over the associated organisations on campus. So what we'll do is we'll create them as groups. The advantage to the student organisations in this instance is the funds are managed centrally, the shared services are provided, it's easier for them to create an account because they're not an organisation anymore, they're just a group associated with it. Now, as before, the parent organisation or the student union in this example can create interest-based groups, campaign-based groups, and all of those sort of things as well as having all of the student organisations as groups. They're then running the campaigns accordingly and the multiple fundraising activities. So let me go back through this. There's 3 scenarios. Let's go back to the first one. The first one is an organisation exists and it just creates groups as needed for all sorts of different flavours. Where we are in a hierarchical relationship between an organisation and its constituent or associated organisations, 2 options exist. One is each organisation is separate and creates their own groups, runs their own campaigns and works collaboratively. The alternative scenario is if the parent entity or the central organisation has a relationship whereby it wants to have some level of coordination and control over the associated organisations, get them to register as groups. Any questions on this one so far, or is it all clear? Okay, quick question over here. The choice of whether to list an associated organisation as a group or leave it as an organisation in its own right is entirely a business choice made depending upon the organisation and the relationship with the organisation. There's no hard and fast rules. If they want a level of autonomy and independence and they're constituted that way, then each organisation registers separately. Where there is agreement, they're constituted accordingly and that sort of thing, and they all agree it's beneficial, then just register the one parent entity as an organisation and register all the other organisations as groups. Next question. Okay, let me reflect this question back. Is there a limit on the number of groups that you can create? No, none. It's just a practical management one from your point of view. And just to add to that, you can create interest-based groups, activity-based groups, external parties can form groups, and again, all subject to organisation approval. Okay, let's wrap up this one there, and I'll speak to you all shortly. Thank you.